Pokemon Champions is here, and there are quite a bit of crucial, amazing competitive Pokemon that are not returning, and their absence has some insane ramifications for the Pokemon Champions metagame. We're going over these Pokemon, what they have done historically in the past that made them so great, why their absence fundamentally changes the game as we know it, and most importantly, which Pokemon are likely to replace these Pokemon in the Champions metagame for those of you who are playing it. And we are starting with one of VGC's most powerful strategies, Redirection. Redirection is among VGC's most powerful strategies, and honestly, it might be refreshing for players this time around that Among Us isn't here to be one of the greatest redirection Pokemon of all time, but we'll get into that towards the end of this section. First, let's talk about the Follow Me users that aren't fully evolved and their impact on the competitive landscape, which by the way, there won't be any unevolved Pokemon returning to Champions except for Pikachu for the time being. Electivire has been memed on in the competitive space for being an utter disappointment of an evolution to Electabuzz back when it debuted all the way back in Diamond and Pearl. Magmortar didn't have the same amount of hype as Electivire, but it was still a lower tier lifer. However, Electabuzz and Magmar, in addition to better bulk thanks to Eviolite, have significantly higher speed over their evolutions. Of course, Follow Me is a priority move, but that's actually part of it. They don't have to worry about EVing themselves to outspeed anything, and can instead focus entirely on bulk investment, really making the most of the Eviolite boost while still packing sufficient natural speed to effectively utilize their non-Follow Me support options, which are themselves highly valuable. Electabuzz brandishes the ever-useful Stifler of opposing utility moves, Taunt, while Magmar amplifies its hit-taking and more directly threatens crucial physical attacking opponents through Will-O-Wisp burns. Both Pokemon's abilities play into status as well, combining with Redirection to block or punish certain highly significant moves. Both of them having Vital Spirit allow them to redirect sleep moves, which are unchained in VGC, as there is no sleep clause. Next, let's talk about Clefairy's history before we get into how the metagame fundamentally changes with the absence of these unevolved Pokemon. Clefairy goes a different route, but boy is it incredible. It's still got the Eviolite fueled bulk to spam Follow Me to high heaven, but it takes the hit taking to new levels by ensuring that even if you do hit its ally, you're not hitting it very hard, thanks to its tremendous ability Friend Guard, weakening every single attack to 75% of the damage they would deal. This most dramatically steals all manner of would-be one-hit KOs, but it messes up pretty much any usual damage threshold. This and Follow Me alone is absolutely incredible utility, but Clefairy pushes things even further with a move pool absolutely bursting with excellent support options. Further making it pretty much impossible to break through its ally is its health restoring Heal Pulse, while it even plays offense while on defense through Icy Wind spread speed lowering, and even directly powers its teammates up with Helping Hand. The flexibility with which it uses these moves is tremendous as well, since just being on the field means Friend Guard is in effect and thus pushes all sorts of terrors to tremendous heights. Basically, Clefairy easily takes a great situation and makes it even better. With the Eviolite boosted bulk of these redirectors, you'd be able to sit there and spam your Broken Spread move with ease. This is most apparent in restricted formats, like with say Caloric Shadow for instance, and how beautifully its Astral Barrage is enabled by Clefairy, as well as other moves like Kyogre and Xerneas. Redirection still exists of course, but this trio uniquely made the tactic especially potent. Now let's talk about what this means for the current Champions metagame. This is an insane nerf to Redirection as a strategy, and by far the best Follow Me user becomes unaware of Clefable, which also has a Mega Form this time around. Historically, Clefable was great partners with Swords Dance King Gambit, who melts teams with Sucker Punch and Kowtow Cleave after a boost, while ignoring Intimidate thanks to its Defiant ability. However, I said this was a big nerf to Redirection, and the reason for that is that Magmar and Electabuzz were good at checking one very major offensive threat in Sneasler, who is also returning. But with only Clefable and Maushold around, Sneasler and his Dire Claw will have a much easier time dealing with Redirection because Magmar and Electabuzz's Vital Spirit blocks sleep from Dire Claw if it ever happened, and could also threaten Sneasler with a burn in Magmar's case. This means that Rage Powder could be relied on more for Redirection with the absence of Follow Me users, but that comes with its own consequences as Rage Powder is blocked by Grass types and the item Safety Goggles. And speaking of Grass types, of course the biggest redirector missing here is Amoonguss. Amoonguss was a long-standing superstar of many generations and formats. It was even excellent in singles. Ever since gaining Regenerator in Black and White 2, it was an incredibly important defensive presence against some of the most broken stuff in the game. It brandishes the 100% sleep move Spore, and its impact was actually such that it helped Sleep get banned in Gen 5 singles. However, even at its best, no matter how good it was, singles Amoonguss couldn't possibly compare to its excellence in VGC. It's one of the few Pokemon to have 3 World Champion titles after all, and the reason it's so dominant is because of its combination of excellent bulk and of course Rage Powder, meaning redirection. Rage Powder really cemented Amoonguss' place as one of VGC's best generation after generation in conjunction with Spore. Amoonguss seriously disrupted multiple opposing Pokemon to the superb benefit of his teammates. It was even outstanding in restricted formats, both against and alongside some of the most busted stuff in the game. It hung with and took on the likes of Kyogre, Xerneas, and company just fine. It helped that it actually had even more utility too, as it received Clear Smog for nullifying stat boosts in Gens 8 and 9. Amoonguss also gained Pollen Puff, which allowed it to heal its ally by 50%. Amoonguss is just a ridiculous amount of support to have in one team slot. And now it's gone, and with arguably the premier redirector gone, as far as Rage Powder users, we are left with Volcarona, who is still pretty good to be fair, and probably the best redirector, so even better than Clefable, Sinistcha. Sinistcha may not have Spore and Clear Smog, which makes Amoonguss a pillar of disruption, but it has some amazing tools thanks to its ability Hospitality, which heals 25% to its partner Pokemon on switch-in, as well as having Trick Room, and of course its signature move Matcha Gotcha, which has a chance to spread burns to both the opponent's Pokemon. The sheer amount of utility that Sinistcha possesses will make it the primary redirector, as it can heal your teammates frequently and set Trick Room. However, speaking of grass types and Trick Room, we're going to talk about both of those in this next section, as Rillaboom didn't make it, and also in DDF and Pinchurchin. Terrains are among the most powerful field conditions in the game. Not only did these two respective surge abilities summon the immensely valuable Psychic and Grassy terrains, they were superb Pokemon in their own right. We will also mention that Pinchurchin is missing too, but it's Pinchurchin. So anyways, first let's talk about in DDF, which also had redirection in its thoroughly impressive toolkit. But before it even had a chance to use it, it set up its immensely valuable Psychic terrain. With so much of VGC centering around the priority turn denying a Fake Out, especially as an anti-Trick Room tool, having a Trick Room setter with a built-in anti-Fake Out mechanism was superbly useful. In DDF was loaded with utility afterwards as well. In addition to Follow Me's immense utility, in DDF could also strengthen its teammates with Helping Hand. In DDF particularly excels in the role of bulky supporting Psychic types for its half normal typing, providing it a Ghost immunity, meaning even in restricted formats, it's immensely useful. Both unafraid of Astro Barrage from opposing Caloric Shadow, and able to support its own partner Caloric Shadow by guarding it from would-be priority revenge kills from the likes of Shin Pao's Sucker Punch, or for that matter, Rillaboom's Grassy Glide. Rillaboom's Grassy terrain both made it a more effective offensive-defensive Pokemon in its own right, which already made it great support before getting into how Grassy terrain more directly boosted its teammates themselves. Rillaboom loved Grassy terrain, imbuing his already powerful Stab Wood Hammer with a massive added boost, with the terrain both providing recovery to help offset recoil damage, and also enabling Grassy Glide's priority. The latter was so effective at 70 base power in Gen 8 that it got nerfed to 55 in Gen 9, and was still excellent for its power and coverage. With Rillaboom keeping so many Pokemon in check with such a superb priority move was already helpful. Nothing like super effective stab priority against Kyogre, its teammates weren't piling on the grass damage so much as enjoying the other terrain effects. The passive recovery of 6.25% subtly but crucially reinforcing their bulk, and it also weakens Earthquake, the previous defining spread move. Grassy terrain is why the single target high horsepower has become so popular as an alternative. Rillaboom was also a priority fiend beyond just Grassy Glide, as it also had the major VGC defining move Fake Out, and it could pivot out of battle with U-turn to safely bring a teammate in, while making it easier for it to come back in and reset the grassy terrain. This was especially crucial in Gen 9, when its Grassy Surge served a defensive function against the mighty Miraidon and its electric terrain setting Hadron engine. Also on the topic of pivoting with Fake Out, that's right, Rillaboom was often seen with Incineroar on many teams as they cycled Fake Out and pivoting with U-turns and parting shots. Rillaboom was wonderful defensively as a whole, with great HP, solid defense, and special defense boosted by Assault Vest to check Flutter Mane. It could pivot around an amazing variety of attacks in almost Incineroar-esque fashion. As per the aforementioned Miraidon and Kyogre, Rillaboom was, just like in DDF, excellent alongside and against the best Pokemon in the game, even in restricted formats. Now, with both these setters gone, there's only manual terrain, which isn't going to be used as much, and thus Fake Out users such as Incineroar and Sneasler have nothing to fear besides Farigira's Armor Tail, and non-Trick Room setters are at risk of getting faked out and KO'd before they can set it. And speaking of Trick Room setters, our next missing Pokemon are of course Porygon 2 and Dusclops. Porygon 2 and Dusclops are already Pokemon of outstanding bulk and several other valuable utility moves, which would have made them fine Trick Room setters even if they had remained final stage evolutions. However, by giving them evolutions and thus letting them boost their already excellent bulk with Eviolite, they go from tanky to downright unbreakable. They were unfazed by some of the most absurdly powerful moves in the game, and thus became among the sturdiest Trick Roomers around. For a playstyle as powerful and defining as Trick Room, to lose such tanky setters is a major blow. First, Cresselia gets its defenses nerfed, and now this, P2 and Clops were utterly tremendous at ensuring Trick Room went up in the face of all manner of outrageously powerful attacks. Dusclops actually took it a step further in this regard, with its ghost typing making it immune to Fake Out. Both had outstanding utility beyond just setting the room up too. Will-O-Wisp Burms could also be as devastating as any damaging move, and its low HP could be turned to its advantage by siphoning a great percentage of opposing Pokemon's health through Pain Split. Additionally, its Frisk ability revealing opponents' health items could be an incredibly useful source of information. Porygon 2, on the other hand, was more able to actually do solid damage in return, which made it more of an immediate threat in its own Trick Room, rather than just setting it for its teammates. Its strong natural special attack was complemented by the boost from its download ability and its excellent move pool, which came to a head in Gen 9. Porygon 2's normal typing already worked for it quite well, in that being neutral to basically every attack was just what a Pokemon of its staggering bulk needed, and it could even make solid use of Stab Tri-Attack offensively. Now though, it had Stab on Terra Blast before Terrasolizing, which was amazing, and once it Terrasolized, if it had gotten an attack boost from download, the attack stat would be higher, and thus Terra Blast would be physical. In addition to firing on all cylinders offensively, Porygon 2's reliable healing on recover made it really hard to break through its tremendous bulk, and in doing so, making its natural offense even better as well. In fact, this allowed it to take on a majority of Pokemon in the format, as did the fact that if it Terrasolized, it would have actual resist to use and would become even more difficult to answer, while any weaknesses gained would be no more difficult to deal with than how it usually had to watch for fighting types. Now, what does their absence mean for champions? Well, with those two gone, Sinistcha and Farigiraf become far and away the best Trick Room setters in the format, with Farigiraf especially being more prominent for hard Trick Room, and here's why. Trick Room with Porygon 2 and its superior bulk and recovery was a lot more sustainable for longer turns, but with Porygon 2 gone and Farigiraf not having good recovery options other than the 2-turn wish, this means that Trick Room becomes a much more aggressive and explosive strategy. Overall, you will get less turns to reset Trick Room since Farigiraf won't be able to heal and Sinistcha relies on Life Dew to heal itself. You now either have to set up your endgame a lot better to checkmate the opponent with one set of Trick Room turns, or you Trick Room as a read to do as much damage as possible. Now, on the subject of damage and offensive Pokemon, we have two very big offensive Pokemon missing from Pokemon Champions with Mega Salamence and Metagross. Here we have a pair of pseudo-legendaries whose Megas were fittingly among the most powerful and impactful in the game, who were among the most potent options. Mega Salamence was an especially extraordinary force, with its base 120 speed being tremendous for something so strong, especially as in addition to its primary Aerolate Stab, the monstrously powerful Double Edge, it also had the spread move option of Hyper Voice. But Metagross was no slouch either, with its base 110 speed being a superb launching point for its own form of ability boosting offense, firing off a slew of dangerous physical attacks, including dual stabs, strengthened by tough claws and often boosted by terrains as well. Enhancing both Megas' ferocious offensive onslaught was the fact that they were not at all easy to take out in return either. In addition to Mega Salamance's pre-Mega ability Intimidate, it packed a stunner of a base 130 defense stat, while Mega Metagross upped the ante in this regard with its more robust defensive typing alongside staggering base 150 defense and excellent 110 special defense. Then Gen 8 came along, Megas went away, and now that they're back, Champions has taken both Salamence and Metagross themselves out of the game. Seeing as both Ments and Meta tended to tower over most other Megas, especially Ments, even after Aerolate was nerfed in Gen 7, this opens up a lot of opportunity for many of the new ones that would struggle to match their overall utility. Many of the new Megas aren't lacking in power or even speed, but Ments and Metagross were so all-around perfect because they were such effortlessly great hit takers as well. Mega Ments especially because it had Intimidate before it Mega Evolves. Their absence allows a Mega like Gyarados, for example, to fill its role, though Gyarados' damage won't be as immediate. So a lot of pressure disappears from the game when you don't have to deal with both Mega Ments and Metagross, which might actually be a blessing given how much firepower is running around already. Now for another two Pokemon pairing, but one that actually has to work in tandem with another, we have Dondozo and Tatsugiri. Dondozo was a uniquely formidable VGC threat. While it was a solid supporting Pokemon in its own right, its most defining dangerous niche was when paired with Tatsugiri and its Commander ability, which would provide Dondozo with a stunning +2 in each stat. It would become a powerful physical attacker while also becoming completely impenetrable on the physical side, with its insane HP alongside the boosting of already impressive defense, while becoming the boost of special defense would also make it tough to take out for what would otherwise be its weak point. From there, it would barrage the opponent with stab wave crashes, supported further by the coverage of Earthquake, and even additional attacking boosting for Order Up. It helped that while it was primarily a Dondozo activation machine, Tatsugiri was also quite a decent supporter for it, ensuring opponents wouldn't be able to take free shots at Dondozo thanks to its solidly powerful, synergistic dual stabs of Draco Meteor and Muddy Water, the latter of which carried the useful potential for accuracy drops to further interfere with counterplay to Dondozo. Tatsugiri also provided solid speed control with Icy Wind and could even boost Dondozo's power further, still with Helping Hand. It could potentially run Taunt as well to play around a myriad of opposing utility moves, from status to redirection attempts to Trick Room. Basically, it had enough tools to enable Dondozo to the fullest, rather than just sitting around uselessly. Now though, neither Pokemon is in the game, and it's a shame to have such a colorful, effective combination no longer available. And speaking of colorful, our next missing essential Pokemon is, believe it or not, Eevee. Of all not fully evolved Pokemon, Eevee? Really? Well, it was only viable in one generation. But oh, was it ever viable there, to say the least. Of course, you couldn't really blame anyone for thinking it's ridiculous. It has absolutely no stats, even with an Eviolite boost. But even if it were marginally bulkier, it wouldn't matter because it was just about nothing worthwhile in its move pool. Except for Gen 7. There, with its EVM Z, Last Resort had the opportunity to transform into Eevee's signature Z move, Extreme Evo Boost. An apt move name if there ever was one, as it gives Eevee a stunning +2 to every stat, an Omni Boost like that of Como-O's clangorous Soul Blaze. It's already excellent when it's +1 across the board. +2 is downright unreal, but it's balanced out by the fact that even something this astonishing doesn't mean much of anything on Eevee, which is still about the least threatening thing ever, even with Stab Last Resort. What Eevee can do though is baton pass all those +2 boosts to another Pokemon, one that can actually use them, and well, talk about an instant game ender. Pokemon have been broken for simply getting speed baton pass to them, let alone every stat. Eevee was a terror in both VGC, whose 2v2 format is usually very hostile to baton pass strategies, demonstrating just how game-ending the boosts were, especially since they came at the cost of a team's Z Crystal, and singles as well, even in Ubers. There's a reason Gen 7 Ubers bans baton pass, but not even the ultra-controversial Ultra Necrozma. Yes, Eevee was scarier than that. In fact, Extreme Evo Boost was the only viable baton pass strategy in VGC, probably ever. How it worked was that it would Extreme Evo Boost, baton pass the Crocodile who had Power Trip, which is a dark move that does more damage the more boosts you have, and then you would sweep with it. Or Eevee would simply pass to other Pokemon who had a better matchup versus the opposing team like Arcanine and Tapu Lele. Now, this strategy only lasted for the first year of Gen 7 VGC, as the power creep of a National Dex format made it obsolete, but this would be the best time for it to come back in Champions, since this is a much more reasonable power level compared to other Gen 9 formats. Except it can't come back, because not only is Eevee missing, but so is Clefairy, Smeargle, and of course its Z Crystal. Oh yeah, we should probably mention that Smeargle isn't returning as well, as historically in both formats, it is the enabler of some really degenerate strategies, especially because it has access to all moves. In VGC, it usually always has Fake Out, Spore, and or Follow Me, but we talk enough about Smeargle on this channel. Now, before we get into the biggest threat that is missing from Champions, we will also mention that there are no Paradox or Legendary Pokemon returning, at least for this first format. So this means no Landorus, no Ogerpon, no Fluttermane, and of course, no Urshifu. All of these Pokemon will technically be the biggest Pokemon not returning, but the Pokemon mentioned here, with the exception of Magmar, Electabuzz, and Eevee, have appeared in every format regardless of power level. This next Pokemon though is neither a Paradoxmon nor a legendary Pokemon, but is just as, if not more impactful, as both Ursalunas are missing from Pokemon Champions. Blood Moon Ursaluna was a ludicrously dangerous special attacker. Its massive base 135 special attack stat was paired with a physical bulk so phenomenal, it almost didn't matter it was so slow. Well, unless you're playing in VGC, in which case this thing under Trick Room was about the last thing you wanted to see. Tailwind did nicely in this regard as well. And speaking of Trick Room, regular Ursaluna is also a great physical attacking Trick Room threat, brandishing the Guts ability so it can't be burned. Blood Moon's power was so singular for how, in addition to its overwrought special attack, it also brandished an even more overwrought stab. Its signature Blood Moon, with its 140 base power, is equivalent to the Boom Burst that made Swellow a viable special attacker. Blood Moon's only drawback is that it can't be used consecutively, but that's not a problem for a Pokemon as good as sticking around as Blood Moon, especially since it also had more to threaten the opponent with. Its secondary stab, Earth Power, rips through most normal resists with ease. Then again, Blood Moon is so strong it kinda just laughs at the concept of resist in general. And with Mind's Eye, which is basically Scrappy, meaning normal and fighting moves bypass Ghost immunity, so forget stifling Blood Moon with Dragapult, everything will get obliterated all the same. No wonder Blood Moon was so resoundingly banned to Ubers and singles. And speaking of normal stabs, Blood Moon also has a spread move option, Hyper Voice, ensuring it's even uniquely a terror in VGC, especially since it can easily slot in alongside Blood Moon as the two complement each other. You can't safely wide guard to shut down Hyper Voice since it can just Blood Moon you to oblivion, while you're not even safe from normal stab the turn after Blood Moon since it also got Hyper Voice to threaten you with. Blood Moon's nigh peerless burst damage is a major threat to not have to deal with anymore. It's not the kind of thing you can really take on defensively. With both Ursalunas gone, Trick Room gets weaker more than it already is, as he now must depend on stuff like Mega Crabominable or something else that's really really slow and strong. And Mega Crabominal isn't a bad Pokemon at all, but Trick Room is just a lot riskier in general now that there is less bulky setters with Recover, and you don't have the near checkmate situations of staring down either Ursaluna in Trick Room. And thank you so much to our Platinum patrons. Thank you to Amphozenus, Alex Sable, Anthony Belval Renault, Daniel Isbeast, Corman, Don Creek, Eric Dissing, Espion Lover, Funky, Glitcherton, Howl, Jack G, King Yabber, Nightfall, Megamon VGC, Mojo Game Slayer, Nurse Jake, One Penguin to Rule, Pretzel SP, Schmooter, Seagulls Incorporated, Soljiro Sakura, Spavoon, Skylaria, Soras and Croxon, Shiwei Miji, Stoneface Colin, Tyler, Kiboflu, Wardine, Zathor for their major support of our videos.